Welcome back, folks. This is the third session on visualization. We were speaking about the process of visualization, and the two important components were, first of all, trying to understand what message do we want to convey. And once the message is clear, what form of visualization should we use? And Anand very aptly gave the example of the cricket shot, where if the ball is outside the off stump, no chance of we hooking it on deep square leg. So let us come to the third component, which is designing the form that we have selected in the second phase of visualization part. Okay, over to you, Anand.
Okay.
Why is designing important?
Well, designing is important because you've got a good message, you've got a good form, correct? And the design can really completely derail the message that you're trying to communicate, right?
Here's an example.
Almost a personal favorite is using 3D representation, right? Adds absolutely zero value to the message and that's being communicated, correct? Somebody decided, so in fact it takes it away, right? Because if you look at those the bars that you see for the 25 to, which is that, the two tallest bars, correct, which is 30 to 34 and 35 to 39.
Yes,
right? It's actually much more difficult to tell whether there is actually a difference between those two when you use 3D effects, correct?
Yes, because of the shadow.
Because of the shadow, correct? And honestly speaking, my submission is, again, going back to purpose, right? What purpose does that 3D representation serve, right?
Yeah.
None whatsoever, okay? So in this case, at least, right, it's a harmless effect. I will show you cases where it can actually be counterproductive. I don't know if you have an example of a 3D pie chart.
Yeah, I have it on the next slide.
Yeah, okay. So, and again, same thing, right? 3D effects. Look, this is very same as the data is, the same as what we saw on the previous chart. But then we've got this 3D pie chart. If you look at it, right? If you look at, let me see the numbers there a little bit, right? If you look at our company, which has 34 and the competitor A, which has 26 on the right side. And if you look at the pie chart on the left side, it actually looks like our company and competitor A have the same share.
Almost, no? Yes.
But look at the chart on the right side.
Oh, yes. Correct.
Right? And if I really wanted to do this, I will switch it around and rotate this pie chart so that competitor B, which is the yellow slice, can actually appear to be the same size as us. Correct? So, 3D effects have zero purpose and in some cases are actually bad. Okay, this to me goes into almost deceit.
Okay.
Because the left side pie chart, okay, without annotations, it essentially says that our company and competitor A have the same market share.
Yeah. Yes.
Correct? So that's why 3D effects are very dangerous, and at least when I used to review presentations, I would actually stop people if they came in with a 3D chart. Correct?
Yeah.
And after about 2 or 3 sessions, they got the message.
Yeah. I mean, they are using 3Ds because 3D charts are so common everywhere today.
Yes, correct. So I have a simple rule, right? I will not look at anybody who comes and shows me a 3D chart. Right? It took me a while to get the message across, right? And I had to use multiple tools to get the message across, but the message was across. And I would say, you should never be using. And if you ask me, take this particular slide and stick it up on your wall, because this will tell you exactly why you should not use 3D effects.
Yes. Correct. And the same thing goes for even the line charts, right? We put too many things often there.
Yes, correct. Now, on a different perspective, right? Again, you're showing monthly this one. Rumor, the same, we had seen this example before. You're talking about on the left
trends,
side.
Seasonality.
Multiple things here, right? look at the title. Let's start with the title, right? It just says cumulative unit sales actuals versus plan, correct?
Yeah.
That's a statement of fact, right? But look at the second one where I put this, right? Sales through July exceed plan by nearly 30,000, right? The message is very clear.
Very clear.
Right?
Very, very clear. Yeah.
On the left side, I have to calculate. And not only do I have to calculate, I have to draw horizontal lines. Okay, the red line in July was a touch under 80, and this one is about 100, more than 100. So, what is the difference? Here it usually is 170, 73.
Correct. Correct.
So, and remember what I said, we said opt for value labels wherever possible, and you can delete some labels to avoid clutter. So if you notice, I have not labeled every single data point.
Yes. Yes.
I have chosen to label every alternate one.
Yes.
Why? It reduces clutter. Correct?
Correct. Correct.
And also, and since I've annotated that, I don't need those horizontal grid lines.
Yeah. Once you annotate, yeah, you don't need those. Correct.
So again, just look at it aesthetically, it's simpler, right? It's much more easier, no distraction, right? It's the equivalent of listening to Beethoven with, background white noise with some guy doing construction work in your house.
I must comment that your analogies are as visually appealing as as they can ever.
Look, and that's the point, right? How to get the point across, how to get the message across.
Yeah.
So the chart is Beethoven here, and those grid lines are the construction noise. Right?
Correct. Yeah, but in general, by designing phase of the visualization, we are trying to say that, well, we make it easier to the eyes.
Exactly. Right, and also call out. See, even the title, right? The key message I want to say is that cumulative actual sales through July, we are ahead of the plan by 30,000.
Yeah.
Right? So
very precise.
Very precise, and it's got the message across. I see this. Somebody says, "Fantastic, good job, move on in life."
Yeah. It says, you want to say things that you want to draw the attention towards, right? Otherwise, you are just keeping it open for discussion.
So, look, so this one I'm going to paraphrase, right? Dr. Anand, the soil director of the institute, when I was in the department, and he was the head of HOD department, right, chemical engineering. He had a very interesting way of saying things, right? He says, look, if I show you an apple and you tell me it's an orange, you're actually confessing to two crimes. You don't know an apple and you don't know an orange, right? So on the same principles, right? So if you want to get something across, do not distract on other things, because by definition, people will their attention will get drawn to that, and they will focus on that.
Yes.
Right. So you have to be very precise about what you show. You have to. So if you draw the difference between accuracy and precision, when you visualize, you have to be both accurate and precise.
Yes. Correct. Okay, so that completes our three-part process of designing visualization tools, understanding the message, conveying that message through a particular tool, and then designing that tool carefully, right? I have more curiosity question for you, Anand. So essentially, all these charts and tables and these numbers get into what is called as data dashboards. So what are data dashboards?
Okay, dashboard, right? And this is something that is there in every single company, right? Everybody wants to talk about dashboards. In fact, I remember seeing, I think, was it a Dilbert trip or something like that, right? Where you had a senior executive saying, and given that it's coming up on Christmas, right? So there's an executive writing a letter to Santa saying, "Dear Santa, all I want for this Christmas is a nice dashboard. Jim from finance already has one." So So look, I mean, the whole idea of a dashboard is, how do you get, we spoke about individual graphs, individual display styles. A dashboard in my mind is just a collection of related displays which serves a purpose, right? And definition of camera, I think this was I love this definition because it was created by, I think, a guy called Stephen Few, who is considered to be a extremely good researcher and a well-known authority on dashboard design. Right, a dashboard definition is, it's a visual display, and very nicely, every word is important here. It's a visual display of the most important information needed to achieve one or more objectives, consolidated onto a single screen, so it can be monitored and understood at a glance. Correct? Every word here becomes critical. Correct? At least the ones where I've reduced the font, those you can ignore. It's a visual display, end of the day. Correct? What does it mean by a visual display is that I see it, I comprehend. Correct? Why do I say it's a visual display? Very often, more often than not, you will hear this thing called the interactive dashboard, where you will see a dashboard and then people will say, oh, you can click here and it will show this, and you can click here and it will show that. No, right? It's supposed to be visual, right? You don't necessarily have to make it interactive. Correct? You only show the most important information that is needed to achieve the particular objective. Correct? Yeah. I need the CEO to understand where we stand from a revenue perspective or from a business performance perspective. It has to be on a single screen. Correct? You don't want to be scrolling up and down. Right? And very, very easily understood. I look at it, I know what's happened. Correct? In fact, the very name dashboard, right, actually was borrowed from the automobile dashboard.
Correct. Right? Yeah.
Now, I always say this, right? Whenever you design a dashboard, you think of the car dashboard. Can you imagine if you're driving a car and the dashboard requires you to reach in and push a button to look at fuel consumption, push another button to understand what your speed is, and in that speed display, it tells you that, you are 32% over the average speed limit, and that 78% of the passengers drive below your speed limit. Is that all relevant? Correct? And also something that says that 14% of people in the age group 18 to 22 like this speed on Facebook. Is that relevant?
Yeah.
I need to know is how fast am I driving?
Correct.
So again, it only shows me how fast am I driving. Correct? It doesn't show me anything which is not needed. Correct? I don't have to do anything to get that information.
Yeah.
I can look at it at a glance. I can look at it at the corner of my eye and I will get the information.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
And it's all there in one screen.
Yeah.
Correct? So to me, when somebody defines a dashboard, right? This principle has to be critical. If you have to do all of these activities and you're throwing all this stuff onto a dashboard, correct? You're going to crash the car.
Yeah.
Same way, you put that on a business dashboard, it's useless. Correct? And my personal favorite, can we get a real-time dashboard? Right? A real-time cannot be a dashboard. A dashboard is meant where you look at it, you glance at it, you get information, and then you go do what you have to do.
Yes.
A real-time is something that you're monitoring. Correct?
Yeah.
If there is a reason to monitor something real-time, it should not be a dashboard. It should be an entity in itself.
Yes.
Correct? So these are all important things to consider when you're talking about a dashboard. Correct?
Correct.
And to me, I just absolutely love this definition, right? Because it literally hits every single aspect of what a dashboard should be and what it should not be. Right? It should be, and the number of times I've seen dashboards designed with tabular display, where you have to scroll. I mean, scroll is, so tell me this, the whole idea of a dashboard is so that, I can put multiple metrics on display at the same time so that I can say, oh, this is going up, this is going down. Okay, understood. Now, if you put tabs, then by definition, they are not on the same page.
Yes.
If you have to scroll, by definition, they're not on the same page.
Yeah.
So then what was the intent of put? So, and this is a common trap people fall into when designing dashboards, right? Essentially, it's this. You will design a dashboard and it starts off with a nice simple concept like this. Then somebody will come back and say, hey, why don't we throw our social media data on top of that? Hey, why don't we throw our HR headcount data on top of that? Hey, why don't we throw this also? Why don't we throw that also? Right? Yeah. Then it gets called an executive dashboard, and you know what? They actually feel proud of it for the fact that every KRA is displayed on one dashboard. Correct? It doesn't make sense at all. Correct? So if the director of IIT Madras wants to see a dashboard, he wants to see how many students are enrolled, how many faculty are there, how many support staff, what is your cost running, operating costs, incidents, etc. He doesn't need to know what the GPA of the distribution of GPA of students was, and how many students were absent for a particular class. Correct?
Yeah.
He doesn't need to know all that. Correct?
Yeah.
So you have to think about those things and not try to overcrowd it with information.
Correct.
Right?
So,
and there is a way to do that.
Correct. So are you suggesting that before we design a dashboard, there has to be some kind of a Pareto analysis done, saying figure out what is most important?
Actually, yes. Yes and no, right? It's not a question of Pareto analysis, right? Because see, look, the problem with Pareto is anyway, it's a question of arbitrarily where it draws the line. You have to go back and say, what is the purpose of this dashboard?
Yes.
And what do you need to put there that helps the user of the dashboard achieve that purpose?
Precisely. Yes.
Nothing else. It's not a Pareto. So let's say the purpose of the dashboard is I just want to look at one metric and one metric only.
Yeah.
Then only that. Don't show anything else.
Correct.
Correct?
So what should be the basic design principle of a dashboard then?
Correct. So which means that, it's very similar to the same thing, right? The dashboard, I mean, even while I have a picture here, even this is a very, very cluttered dashboard, in my opinion. But it helps highlight the point. So what we'll say is that you will show the big picture. So that at a glance, you will see certain critical things. And, there's some color-coded red, yellow, green, whatever you want to have that to draw attention, use colors.
Mm-hmm.
You can zoom in on the specific, correct? And then from there, you can provide a link to say, okay, here, if you want to see more details, you click here and it'll take you elsewhere to look at the other details.
Yeah.
Don't cram the other details into the dashboard.
Okay.
Right? So very simple. So which means I see it, I should see the big picture, this one, get a sense of the metrics in some nice, suitable display. If you want to show revenue, you may want to just show only the revenue, or sometimes you will say, look, let me show you the trend of the revenue as well. Correct? Because the trend is also important. Okay, no problem. But I can zoom in, I can expand it, and then I can click to get into supporting details. Okay, why is this happening? Why is that happening? And there might be other dashboards that support that. Now that is in this case, it might be a data warehouse monitoring dashboard.
Okay.
So you can click that and say, I see something wrong with the data warehouse system. I will click that. I'll go to the data warehouse monitoring dashboard. Correct? I see something wrong with website. I will go click and look at a website monitoring dashboard. Correct? Okay. So yes, there will always be questions asked. Whenever somebody looks at a dashboard, questions should be raised. Correct? Why is what happening? But the solution to answering those questions is completely separate dashboards that address only those questions. Okay. Not trying to squeeze. So I've heard this way people say that, right? When they say, I understand at a glance. You should answer all the potential questions that can come up. No, it should not. Yeah. You should have additional information, additional links, additional accessible information that answer those questions. Right?
But that's a separate thing.
To call that out separately. Right? If you try to cram all that into the dashboard, right, then essentially you get a huge mess all over the place. That you can't drive the car. You're actually spending all your time reading the dashboard.
Yeah. Correct.
And that's what happens.
Correct. All right. That was the basic understanding. But essentially, are dashboards. So are you suggesting that there should be a separate dashboards for finance and there should be a separate dashboard for marketing? But you are saying we are not saying that at all. We are saying find out the purpose, design a dashboard.
Correct. So and typically yes. So for instance, right? Look, since you brought up finance marketing, there is a CEO's dashboard that will come up, which will give some key metrics. Correct. Now, there might be one or two critical metrics or report things that will show up for, representing finance and marketing. Correct? Now, the details. So, for instance, I might want to say, how much did I spend on marketing this month? Correct? I don't, the CEO dashboard, I might not say how much was spent in Tamil Nadu versus Karnataka versus Kerala. Correct. That might be separate market. And if you say, oh, look, okay, looks like your spend of monthly spend is increasing in marketing. Why is that happening? You might have a separate dashboard that says, look, over the last few months, we've increased a lot of spending in Kerala, in South India. That's why it's increasing. Or we have launched a new product and that's why we are spending more. Correct? So, purpose. Correct? And, one of the things I should also emphasize when you're talking about marketing and this one, and more it gets this one. When you design, especially when you're using colors, correct? Accessibility becomes a big issue. Correct?
Why so?
So, for instance, right, typically it's very common to use red, green, and yellow to highlight metrics that are good, bad, or needs monitoring.
Correct.
Correct? What happens if the person reading the dashboard happens to be colorblind?
Okay.
So then your red, yellow, green, and if they have red, green colorblindness, you've lost the fundamental premise of why you are highlighting it red and green.
Yes. Yes.
Correct. So there has to be design for accessibility, and red, yellow, green is universally accepted for good, bad, ugly, right?
Yeah.
So, but then you have to have the ability to be able to customize it, or at least the end user to come back and say, look, I have a certain visual impairment, and it should switch over to 3 different colors that are easily distinguishable, but at the same time, even for somebody who is colorblind. Right? And in fact, if you go to a lot of websites, they'll actually give you color palettes that, while they may not appear to be the same colors as you see it to a colorblind person, they will appear, they are guaranteed to appear as distinct colors.
Oh, okay.
Right? So, and for different types of color blindness. So sometimes, choosing the right palette is also important. Right? And I think, it's not, so when I saw this red, that's the first thing that struck me is, what, if the person here, when looking at it, were colorblind, they will not understand between which system is red and which system is green.
Yeah.
And, that's about as fundamental a communication error as there can be, right?
Correct.
So yeah, you're right. So to the point, right, that you have to have these kinds of high level and then breakdown dashboards and then, further breakdowns and things like that. And you can always have them all interlinked, where if a question comes up, you can always pull up the other dashboard and then dig into it. But don't try to cram everything into the same dashboard.
Yeah. Correct. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Anand. Thank you for your insights. That does help in understanding why visualization is important. And once you have understood the purpose, how to go about doing it. So thanks a lot. And hopefully this session is helpful. So thank you.
Always a pleasure, Rahul. Anytime, happy to help. Okay.
Thank you. So let us end the session here.